Why are there so many acronyms in this game? And what do they mean? AC, DC, PC, NPC? This can look intimidating to the newcomer, and I'm going to ease you into these so that you're more comfortable. Today, we're going to look at the NPC. NPC stands for non-player character. This is a character in the story, your game, that is controlled by the game master or dungeon master, or you. This is not to be confused with PCs or player characters. These are characters that are controlled by your players. Now, NPCs can be friendly, neutral, or adversarial. Think of a simple bartender in a pub. NPCs can be used once in passing or revisited for years, becoming bonded with your players. There are times when NPCs become beloved characters in a campaign and your players can become really invested in them. Now, with all this in mind, you can see why it can be a valuable thing to make good NPCs. Now, of course, if the game you're running is a pre-written one, there will be NPCs included. And I'm encouraging you to read them over thoroughly and imagine what they're like. Consider for a moment what it would be like to be them. Now, we could talk about NPCs in terms of the depth they entail, and this will range from simple to wildly complex. If we could consider The Lord of the Rings as having NPCs, Barlam and Butterbur had a role that was very different from King Theoden or Elrond. With that being said, a town guard that the players might talk to one time is not going to require the same level of work that a close comrade will. Giving your players a chance to develop relationships with characters you control will give you an opportunity to open your game up to deeper stories, and frankly, this is where the players have a real chance to grow. It's important to first recognize which NPCs need depth and which can exist at the surface. That town guard that the players are going to encounter one time is not going to require a deep dive. Plus, I think it's unwise to put the same level of depth into every NPC that you design. You're going to burn out. You don't need it in all of them, and frankly, you don't have the time. Now, what's an example of an NPC that might require more depth and complexity? Perhaps the party hires a guide that's going to take them on a 3-week journey into the mountains in search of a lost relic. The guide's going to have knowledge of their needs and spend a lot of time with them. It's possible that the guide will defend them, rescue them, and more importantly, befriend them. This could be an opportunity to make some very heavy connections. It's an example of an NPC that would require some depth and planning. Now, on the flip side of the coin, there will be countless NPCs that the players may encounter that do not require this. It could be a passerby on the street that they question for some reason. It could be a shopkeeper in the town they're passing through that sells them provisions. These are called quick NPCs. These are momentary encounters that may only require a description, a name, and perhaps a personality. These are much easier, and you can make a lot of them in a short period of time. In my preparation for a game, I like to come to the table with a short list of quick NPCs in my pocket ready to go. So what makes a good NPC? This is not an easy question to answer simply. I will say that like any character development in any story, it's going to depend on a few factors. A character's flavor will be part design, part description, part relatability, and part delivery. The more NPCs you make, the better you're going to get at this. So let's look at a couple of ways to generate them. Let's start with the quick NPCs. There's nothing more to this than a simple list. I like to keep mine to about 10 to 20, and I put them in my notes so I can just pull them up at any time. Now you may ask yourself, why bother keeping a list? I'm pretty good on the fly, and I have a good imagination. Yeah, and that's good, and your list can be tweaked to meet your own needs. For me, I have a hard time generating names for people on the fly, at least quickly. One time I had a party, they're in a pub, and they're looking to get some answers. They look around the room and they see this table with 4 farmers sitting there having an afternoon beer. They approach and my player says, "Howdy, what's your name, friend?" And my first audible response to this question was, "Fuck," because I didn't have a name ready on the fly. Well, as you can guess, that farmer was instantly named Farmer Fuck by my party. This is a bit of comic relief, as you can imagine, but in the moment you could see how a list would have really helped me out here. Now, my quick NPC list will be divided into categories: pubs and taverns, guards, random people, gang members and thugs, politicians, nobles, shop owners. You get the point. And over time, you could accumulate an entire book of these, so it could be fun to keep a separate notebook just for your NPCs. Now, under each category in my list, I simply list a race or ancestry, a reference to gender, and a name. You can take this further if you'd like and add descriptions and mannerisms, and sometimes I'll even make a note of accents or voices I might use for each. Now, it's important to note that that's not really important. You don't have to put accents or acting into your NPCs. It's a touch that some people prefer, and if you do, maybe you want to add this to your list. Now for names, I like to use fantasynamegenerators.com. It's a great website. There are countless names here for every type of place, entity, race, class, monsters, you name it. I would avoid using names that are from movies or popular culture, as they kind of preload the characters with some kind of experience that belongs to someone else. And I mean, that's my preference, of course, and you can do you. Now, one resource that I like to use sometimes for compiling NPCs is in the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide. It's in Chapter 4, and there are some tables for things like, you can roll on these tables for stuff like appearance, abilities, both high and low, talents, mannerisms, interaction traits, ideals, bonds, so on. Now, these are good, and they function as a springboard or like a starting point, and they're definitely worth a look. There's also a section on developing villains in this chapter, which talks about schemes and methods as well as weaknesses. It's a great place to go to get started. This is a simple beginning, but it will get you off to a good start. Now let's talk about more complicated NPCs. These are the kind that your party may have a deeper or longer lasting relationship with. Now the reason you want more complexity here is the players may ask the NPC questions about where they're from or how they got here. Who knows? These NPCs are the type you intend to insert into the story. It's not always necessary to keep a long list of these. You make this list knowing that the party will encounter them eventually. Okay, here are a couple of strong places to start. Number 1, there is no creativity in the void. You're going to hear me say this a lot. You need something to react to in order to jumpstart this process. So the DM's guide earlier that I mentioned, that is the type of springboard that gives you a framework from which to build. Now my first technique that I use is I keep a notebook on me when I'm out and about. Whenever I'm in public, I look at the world as if it's my own collection of NPCs. I make notes on everything from entire profiles of people I encounter to simple notations about mannerisms and dress and posture, appearance, accents, cadence, smells, physique, and so on. Now, these details from actual life help me draw up fictional characters. There are times when I create an NPC that is it's a direct copy of a person I encountered in the world. Okay. So currently I have an NPC in the game that I run that is a carbon copy of my old landlord's wife. Just going to put that out there. See if you can guess who it is. So establish the system for yourself. Keep it handy. It could be a list in your phone, your voice notes that you come home and jot down. Number 2, tap into your players' backstories. If you're playing with a group that has created a past and history for their characters, consider those stories, read them. Think about the cast of characters that would have been in their lives, and consider an NPC that has a relation to them. This builds some serious energy for the story arc, and you could potentially use this NPC to circle back to the PC's past. This is powerful. Okay, so backstory is the second one. All right, the third one I'm going to touch on, there's going to be some eye rolling and possibly some backlash in the comments, but I'm going to try and justify it. Number 3, you could use AI within reason. Okay, I know there's a lot of controversy here, and as a college professor, I am certainly interested in how this is all going to play out, in the future. That's a different video. But here's a way you could sort of effectively use this. Put an AI prompt in and ask for a character that plays a supporting role in a story about an adventure, your adventure. You can put your own details into this spot. Add to the prompt that you're looking for their inner conflict and their motives. And what you're looking for is a brief response that gives you a framework to build off of. Now, these could be text AI responses or they could be image-based AI responses. Depends on if you're a person that is more image and picture-based or if you are more text-based, just in terms of your own thinking. Now, you're going to modify the results you get with your own flavor. Allow the AI response to simply give you something to react to. Remember, there's no creativity in the void. We're not looking for AI to do our job. We're looking for AI to give us something to react to. This is going to become your own NPC. You're just looking for the springboard. I think this is totally a legit way to create characters. Now, before we get to the last part, please like and subscribe. I love teaching D&D and other role-playing techniques, so come along for the ride. Also, and this is really important, for my newcomers, ask me questions in the comments. I enjoy helping you get past your fears of running a game. And don't worry about the naysayers and the trolls. I monitor my comments section for the high and mighty, and I quietly delete them. I want this to be a productive forum, not an arena for flexing superiority. All right, let's get on with it. Now that you have a general picture filled out of who this NPC is, let's visit a few simple considerations when detailing these NPCs. All right, consideration number 1. In most cases, there is no good or bad. People are complex, and unless you're a supervillain, you probably think your causes are just, even if everyone around you thinks you need some serious checking. Think about Jaime Lannister from Game of Thrones. This is a guy that over 8 years of story, you grow to hate him, you love him. You hate him, you love him. He's complicated, and he has reasons for doing what he does. So when making your NPC, consider a mix. This NPC might be a devout worshiper who talks of all the glory of their deity, and simultaneously throws beggars out of their establishment because they're lazy and smell bad. Or this NPC might spend all of their time helping solve other people's problems, but he's running from solving his own. Now, the funny thing about this is, I said before you want to build off of experiences in your own life, and those 2 examples that I just pulled out of nowhere are people I know. All right, consideration number 2, this NPC has their own motives. Consider what drives the NPC in their own pursuits. Is it wealth, knowledge, revenge, enlightenment, happiness, power, greed, helping others, maybe some larger cause? Make a note about what drives them. This will help you later when you are deciding what their next moves are going to be. Consideration number 3, give them a past. This should be a reasonable story that helps to fill out their motivations and gives them a little depth. How did they get to this moment where they encounter your players? Is this a town guard who used to be one of the most skilled sellswords in the land, only to resign in shame after seeing his mother killed while he helplessly watched? The past helps support the motives we just spoke about as well. This is how our characters become layered. All right, consideration number 4. Does this NPC need stats? Like abilities, hit points, armor class, proficiencies? They will in the event that they may encounter combat. Now, most quick NPCs will not require you to get this granular, but if your NPC is going to be traveling with the party or have motives that may lead to violence, you might need to jot these down. All right, everybody, this is your introduction to NPCs and how to get started. And I'm going to make up follow-up videos to this down the road to add other methods and techniques that are not mentioned here. But I really had a good time today. I hope you learned something. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Take care.